Billy, if I had told you on January the 4th that in addition to being married this summer, which I assume you knew by then, that you would be hoisting the Stanley Cup in between the two things, you would have been what?
Well, I mean, I would have called you a liar and just said, hey, listen, we were walking into the World Juniors and guys were whispering in my ear going, lose for Hughes, lose for Hughes, you got a shot, It was a whirlwind. But if you asked me at the start of the year when we built the team and they were taking the ice, I was excited. I said, hey, we got a chance to win here. So there was kind of two different worlds that we were living in. And I know in January I traveled with the team just before that, and it was pretty toxic and chaotic. And there was some good stuff happening, but they were very small moments. And then, obviously things settled in and we started to win, and obviously you can see the end result.
Bill, you guys were taking calls, though, right? I mean, there was a lot of talk in December.
When you're in last place, when you're in dead last place in January, you are always taking calls. Let's get that straight.
Everyone wants to help you, right? Everyone wants to help you.
Nobody wants to cut a deal with you unless they're robbing the bank on you, and that's just the way the NHL is. And it's just when you're down, no one's there to help. But they make calls like they want to help you, but they're not really helping you, and that's just the nature of the game.
Bill, if you look at major moves over the last couple of years, you bring Braden Shen in for 2 first-round draft picks. Then you trade Paul Stastny right before the trade deadline. And that June, you acquire Ryan O'Reilly. And when you look at major significant moves that put you into the position to win a Stanley Cup, and you look at what Vegas did in such a short period of time, did the Vegas model and the success of Vegas in putting a group of guys together change your mindset in any way about how this whole thing works?
A little bit. I mean, they kind of inspire you how they did it and snap the pieces together for sure. I think for us, we have a really good, I would say it's almost like a board where you have Dave Taylor, you have Al McGinnis in there, you had Keith Kachuk. At one time we had Marty Brodeur in there. Myself from a coaching background, a scouting background, Tim Taylor's won a couple cups, and Rob DeMaio, all sit inside that room. And, there's some good concepts of what wins, what are we missing? And that went on along with the club. And, Doug's pretty good at listening to everybody. And I think you can see when we snapped in the centerman, with Bozak and Sundqvist snapped in there, and also Robert Thomas can play a little center where we drafted, and then acquiring Ryan O'Reilly. Center, that's what we were kind of missing. That was one of the keys we were missing, and obviously those guys kind of snapped into place. And, they took a little bit of time to get the chemistry of the group and everybody get used to each other and everybody to settle in. But once they did, they took off like we thought they would.
And you paid a big price for Ryan O'Reilly, 5 pieces. But how about that specific piece of getting him? How did that direction, how long had that conversation been going on, or that specific direction for Ryan O'Reilly?
Well, I think when he was leaving Buffalo at the end, he became available, and we were very serious on him because he seemed to be the guy that could, put us over the hump. The things that you love about him is he leads by example. He's, for our young kids that are there, the Robert Thomases of the world, and watching him and how hard he practices and how hard he prepares and the professional that he is, he leads by example on the ice, and he drives our group, and just to have him around there and have him involved, he was a key piece, and I think when the club started to turn around, and it's probably the most resilient hockey club I've been around in my life. I've had a chance to win my 3rd championship, and by far this is the one that was probably the highest drive and the highest resiliency from those guys, and he's a huge piece of that. When we were in dead last place, he's like, hey, we're starting to play a little bit better. We're going to believe we're going to want to run and we're going to get there. So he was a huge part of that.
We'll talk about one of those championships in a minute, but I want to talk about Jordan Binnington. Drafted in 2011 in the 3rd round. He had played all of 1 NHL game prior to being called up this year. Did you see this in him?
Well, we go back to his draft year. He had some incredible stuff happen. One was I saw a game, and Larry Plow and myself were at a game in Kitchener. And as a draft eligible, I think he stopped 45 that night. He was outstanding, and he played big in the big moments. And then he had a game in the Memorial Cup, and those 2 games were the aha moment. And normally, it's really odd that you see a draft-eligible goaltender playing the Memorial Cup. And he did, and he was outstanding. So I couldn't believe when he was available in the 3rd round, and we had a chance to get him, He took a little bit of time. His resiliency was great. You think about all the things that he got his opportunity. He was ready. So, we saw little bits and pieces along the way. He had an unbelievable playoff run in Chicago in our farm system against Utica. So there were little bits and pieces. It's a maturity process that those guys go through, and especially as a goaltender, it takes a little bit of time. I don't think you can ever predict in any certainty that he would perform like he did in Game 7 and win us a championship in that game and be a difference maker for sure. That's there's always things you're never going to be quite sure of until they do.